Hello everyone, Cannon Lowy here, this time with another World of Tanks video, and I have a really good replay that I wanted to showcase one of the issues that I don't like in World of Tanks, and that is derp guns in higher tier vehicles. Now, just to clarify to anyone who is new, what exactly is considered a derp gun? A derp gun is primarily a large caliber gun that has such bad armor piercing rounds that the high explosive rounds are either more effective or they are the only option to use with that gun. For an example, the M4's 105mm gun is a derp gun, or the KV2's 152mm howitzer is also considered a derp gun. And derp guns, pretty much whoever uses them are going to fire only high explosive out of them, because in the case of the KV2, it only has 110 penetration on its armor piercing rounds, but 86 on its high explosive, and the high explosive will deal more damage consistently than the armor piercing rounds. So here I am on in my STI here on Himmelsdorf, and yes, this is World of Tanks 1.0, with the recent changes and everything to the graphics, and I decided to go down to Tank Alleys because in my STI, if I hide my lower plate, I have really strong frontal armor that is decently reliable, especially since I am top tier, with me facing other tier 8s and 7s here. So down in this alleyway, I find an IS-6. Now, an IS-6 probably has little to no chance of penetrating me really at all from the front, especially with my lower plate covered here. And you'll see me that IS-6, he fired at me and I fire at him, but my gun isn't really accurate enough to hit his commander's hatches reliably here. And now here is the main focus of this match right here, the Oni. Now the first shot he completely misses, and I hit him because, well, it's pretty easy to hit a super heavy that is 2 tiers below you, especially with the tier 10 gun here with 258 average penetration on the normal rounds here. Now, right here. So this is one of the reasons why I really despise derp guns in higher tiers. Now, he did 300 damage to me, or 291 if you want to be exact, and he automatically damages 3 different critical hits. Now, he injured the gunner, commander, and the gun itself. Now, if this was an artillery, I would understand, because artillery have to fire high explosive no matter what now. But this tier 7, if he was not using the derp gun on the Oni, he would have probably had very little chance of penetrating me. And which isn't necessarily the bad thing that I'm talking about here, but he's dealing 300 damage to me on a tank that has very good frontal armor. And if you look here, he actually hit my gun mantlet, or slightly above it here, with the hole there, I guess, going past the gun mantlet. So he dealt 300 damage with potentially hitting one of the strongest armor on my entire tank, also damaging like 2 extremely crucial components of my tank as well. With the commander damaged, and I have less view range, and with the gun and the gunner damaged, I can't really hit anything. So with that, I decided to move up, because if this Oni is going to continuously fire at me from his position, he's just going to eventually kill me here with that damage output. Now the IS-6 is using his premium rounds, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, which isn't surprising because the IS-6 has terrible normal rounds here. and I'm just waiting for him to pop out here. Now this Oni actually plays this game extremely well for what he's doing now. He just waited for me to fire, and he only damages my gun again at this point, which is quite surprising because before he dealt 300 damage and damaging my gun, and then the IS-6 penetrates me, probably in the lower plate here. Yeah, right in the corner there, so that isn't really that surprising. And then I go after the Oni, because since I'm in this position now, the IS-6 probably has no chance of hitting me. And there we go again. So he fired at like the main armor that I have. Now, with high explosive, how it seems to work is that when you splash an area that has really weak armor, it counts the weakest armor that the splash hits as how it calculates the damage or something like that from other videos that I've seen. So go in the really awkward position. Okay, there we go. So it probably counted my roof hull roof armor as how it calculated the damage for that, but he deals 300 damage to me again, and this is the main thing, is that this IS-6, since I'm playing my tank correctly and trying to hide my lower plate here, this IS-6 has no chance of penetrating me, really, and the IS-6 technically has a tier 7 heavy tank gun on it. So if this Oni was using his other gun, he would have not been able to do anything to me, let alone 300 damage per shot here. And the IS-6, as you can see, well, does he shoot me again? I think he might be going for the Mauerbrecher now. Well, maybe not. But I'm just focusing on this Oni right now because the IS-6 isn't really going to do anything. And there he goes again, doing 300 damage at the same time every single shot that he's fired. So he is essentially doing the same damage as his AP gun, so to speak, the 10 centimeter, without needing to penetrate at all. All he needs to do is hit anywhere on my vehicle, and he's doing, well, he's actually aiming for my roof here. It seems like he hit there again, so he is kind of aiming for as weak as you can get for a howitzer, a weak point there, and he's dealing damage to me every single shot without needing to aim at all. And that's kind of the big issue that I have with this, is that not only does it doesn't really require any skill, but it makes it so that this IS-6 only penetrated me once. So 900 damage to my tier 9 heavy tank that is renowned for having good frontal armor has been taken away from a tank 2 tiers below me purely because he was using high explosive and a large caliber gun. Now, I might sound like I absolutely hate derp guns. No, I'm not completely hating on derp guns, so to say. I just don't like them in tier 7 and above. And that is because in tier 7 and above, in this case, so in my tier 9 here, it basically negates the need to aim for weak spots or penetrate whatsoever. And if, in my opinion anyway, if you're a tier 7 vehicle, you should not reliably be able to penetrate a tier 9 heavy tank from the front if he's playing correctly. Now, I feel like I was trying to play correctly. I mean, the IS-6 did get one shot in my lower plate there once, but besides that, I feel like I was playing correctly in the way of facing this IS-6, and I had to go for the Oni purely because he had that dirt gun, and if I did not go after and kill him, I would have just died from high explosive after doing 300 damage at every shot that he fired at me without needing to aim for any weak spots or anything like that. Now, in this replay, the T-54E1 just auto-loads me, so And even from like that side angle, he was having a little bit of an issue penetrating my side armor even there. So yeah, and so what makes why in terms of why don't I necessarily hate on derp guns? Well, I think derp guns are fun, but in the higher tiers, they don't have a place. So they're just there to. I don't even really know why they're even there. I feel like at the KV2 and the OI should be the last highest tier vehicles that should have a howitzer derp gun on it. And that is because, well, even against tier 8s, like tier 8 and 10 is tier 8, 9, and 10 is where armor matters a whole lot more than at tier 6 and 7, so to say. And it just and I kind of feel like Wargaming, when they added the howitzers to especially the Type 4 and Type 5 heavy, it was just an excuse to not buff their current mediocre guns. Because the Japanese heavies, the main reason why, especially that Oni had decided to use the derp gun, I would think, is because the Oni has a awful 10 centimeter gun on it. It deals 330 damage and it does 190 penetration, which isn't terrible, but they made its DPM 1600, which is completely mediocre to most vehicles, or at least with its accuracy and aiming time with that terrible DPM. So I understand that, but it comes to those situations where my tier 9 heavy tank, like if I was facing even against other tier 8s in that position, I probably would have only taken that one IS-6 hit, or maybe if the Oni was the Oho with the 10 centimeter Kai gun, I probably would have gotten maybe hit twice, and that's it. And then I probably would still have had plenty of HP to go against that T-54E1 and just face tank his autoloader in the side. But then after the I-6 was taken care of, then I could have gone after the E1 and killed him, and so to say. And so just to try to not rant as long as I think I have been ranting, that's kind of my thoughts on derp guns in World of Tanks. I feel like they're fun guns to use, but they should definitely only be in the lower tiers, because in the higher tiers you have stuff like this. My heavy tank, like I said before, the STI or ST1, whichever one you want to call it, it's renowned for being a tough heavy tank to kill. But since the guy was using a high caliber gun with high explosive, he was able to deal almost half of my hit points without needing to aim whatsoever or have any tactical input, so to say. I guess if the IS-6 and Oni had rushed me and the Oni was using the normal AP gun, I could have still been killed by them if they worked together really well. Or well, I know I had a Mauerbrecher behind me, but they could have still dealt serious damage to me if they had tried to flank me out of that position, or at least they could have shot my lower plate for free that way or whatever. But the only exception that I think for the derp guns that I would kind of allow, so to say, in the higher tiers is the T-49, and that is only because, well, the T-49 and the Sheridan also gets that gun, and the only even though that I absolutely hate dealing with that gun, especially with my light tanks, I feel like it is one of the few reasons to actually get the vehicle. So it's if it was taken away, it still would have been, an alright tank, but it wouldn't really be all that special without it. So that's like the only gun that I would kind of be okay with. I would rather like the derp gun for the T49 to only be on the Sheridan, but I have no say in that. Also, I guess another thing is that if you could say that if you had a large caliber gun like a 150 millimeter gun, you could just fire high explosive out of that, and then you would basically get the same effect. And yes, that is kind of true. Like for an example, that Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger, if he was using the 15 centimeter gun and a high explosive, he would be essentially dealing the same damages that Oni did to me. The problem with it is that the derp gun was on a heavy tank. Like if derp guns were only on tank destroyers for the higher tiers, then I probably wouldn't care because it's a tank destroyer. But since it's a heavy tank, or any other class besides artillery, because artillery is pretty much all derp guns if you want to classify it like that. But I would probably be only okay with derp guns being mainly on tank destroyers or artillery using high explosive guns like medium tanks, light tanks, or heavy tanks. I really don't like derp guns being on higher tiers. So say you're if you would say your thoughts on derp guns being in higher tiers. For an example, the Japanese heavy tank line, which is kind of like one of the things about Japanese heavies that people really don't like, myself included. And also stuff like the T49. What do you feel about those higher tier derp guns? And for me, I have only used I have used the derp gun on the OHO once. I kept getting in tier 10 matches. I used it once and only did like 500 damage from shooting 2 or 3 times, and then I just went back to the other gun because I was getting really tired of tier 10s. But for the Type 4 and Type 5 especially, I have never researched the 15 centimeter gun at this point, and I only will on the tier 10 purely because of the accelerate crew training. So I don't even use Japanese heavies for the derp guns. That's supposedly what they're made for now, I guess. So those are my thoughts. I know I kind of went a little long on it, but I really feel like it's one of the things that definitely I don't really like about World of Tanks. In the Japanese heavies, I feel like, for the most part, you perform better if you use the AP guns, but most people use the derp guns anyway. For the instances that this replay represented. So I'm going to end it here, and thank you very much for watching. Tell your thoughts about higher tier derp guns from primarily tier 7 and above, and have a wonderful day.
Really?
Yeah.